The following is a program of the Santa Barbara County Education Office. To learn more, visit sbceo.org.
Hi, I'm Susan Salcido, Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools, and I am delighted to introduce our guest today, Santa Barbara County Fire Chief Mark Hartwig. Mark, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's good to be here.
I can't wait to have you share your story, talk about what you do right now as our Santa Barbara County Fire Chief. But one of the things we want to talk about in this show is talk about a career pathway, how you got to where you are. And so I'd love to start at the very beginning, where you were born, raised, where you were brought up.
I was born in a small town on the Eastern Sierras, Bishop, California, just south of Mammoth, and raised there till I was about 7. My dad was the doctor in town and my mom was a nurse. And then we moved from Bishop when I was about 7. My father got ill, had cancer, and he passed away when I was about 7 years old. Moved down into the San Fernando Valley and grew up in the San Fernando Valley for about 3 years, and then moved out to the San Gabriel Valley. And Arcadia was where I did most of my junior high and high school, and then that's kind of it. So I kind of Bishop and moved my way around through the valleys, and then when we got married, ended up out in San Bernardino County. It seemed like the most affordable. Started our family in Wrightwood, and then just literally we're selling our house in Rancho Cucamonga now.
Wow. Thank you for tracing that for us, for sure. And so I understand you had a big family when you were a child. You had many siblings. So tell us about the number.
So I'm the youngest of 7, which means that I was spoiled rotten.
Were you?
Yeah, well, I deny it to this day with my siblings, of course.
You're telling it from their perspective, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And maybe in hindsight, I was spoiled a bit.
So youngest of 7.
Yeah, my mom's baby. My mom is 94, and so I'm still her baby. But yeah, a huge family, and just so fun. There was always commotion, and I find myself now liking commotion. And I have friends, of course, who just get kind of freaked out with just multiple things going on around them. And for me, I'm not really at home unless there's just hubbub. Hubbub.
Perhaps it served you well in your career, too, as we talk about that, right? Lots of hubbub going on, for sure. And so, Mark, where did you go to college?
Started at Pasadena City College, graduated from high school, and felt like I'd get my general ed out of the way. And back then it was $50 for as many classes as you wanted to take for a semester. And knowing that I needed to get my 2 years of general ed, I did that for 2 years at Pasadena City College, and then transferred to Cal Poly Pomona.
Okay. Well, talking about the city college experience, boy, we are so fortunate with our city colleges throughout California. They are jewels. Not necessarily $50 for anything you'd like, but here in Santa Barbara County, free for those who start right after high school. So still the experiences are pretty rich for sure. Yeah. So what did you intend to study, or what did you study? What did you end up in a degree in?
Pretty early on, my mom was a nurse and my dad was a doctor, so pretty early on I knew, I just loved medicine. I loved, maybe not so much about medicine itself because I didn't know much about it, but the personal interaction, the stories about relationships that I would hear from my mom, and just a little bit I remember from my dad. And so I had it pretty clear early on that I wanted to pursue medicine, and so I just naturally thought that I was going to be a doctor, and so I would pursue that. And so at PCC, or Pasadena City College, I took all my general ed, and then decided that I needed to take my pre-med requirements. And so you don't really major in pre-med, you take all the requirements to get into medical school, and then you pick a major. Now it seems like it's kind of, they're a lot more interested in a well-rounded, kind of maybe even arts and literature or liberal arts. back then it seemed like it was really science, and so I picked zoology. Come to find out, my dad was a zoology major and took all of his pre-med requirements, so I think that was part of it as well.
Wow. When did you discover that your father was a zoology major?
I wasn't until after I had chosen it, and I came home and told my mom, and she said, well, you know, your dad was a zoology major as well. And so, and he loved, we lived in Bishop, and so kind of the outdoors, nature, it was something that I've always been attracted to, is that, especially the eastern Sierras where you have that really rugged beauty. And animals, for me, I'm the guy that can't, you know, kill the spider. I have to pick it up and release it outside, and
Yes.
and I've kind of always been ribbed for that kind of thing. So it isn't surprising at all that animals or living things would be interesting to me.
Yeah, that's great that you studied it. I mean, you had such a deep interest in it, a genetic interest in it,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
And so you completed your college career with a major in zoology then?
Yeah, I was a zoology major, and then I took enough chemistry that I think I could have gotten a minor in chemistry. For pre-med, you have to take the year of organic and a year of inorganic, and then the physical chemistry, and so lots of science. But my degree was actually in zoology, and then you take all the other requirements for medicine on top of that.
Okay, so somehow zoology to fire chief. So trace the career path for us there. How did that happen?
Again, I think I go back to what I was passionate about, and I'd had enough mentors along the way that always encouraged me to follow my passion, and not necessarily follow money, but follow what I was most interested in, and money wouldn't be as important, or money would follow. And so knowing that I wanted to do medicine, but taking the MCATs and then applying my first year, I didn't get into any schools my first year, and so seeking some career guidance from mentors or people that I trusted, said, well, a couple of different paths. You can go back to school and you can get another degree, you can get a master's degree, or you just maybe take a study course or something for the MCATs. And so on my way, I decided to go back for my master's. My degree in zoology, my senior project was in ornithology, which is birds. And so I went back for my master's and started working on a research project on the white-headed woodpecker. My senior project was on the acorn woodpecker up in Wrightwood.
Wow.
And then I was studying the white-headed woodpecker and looking for money, because of course when you're doing a master's project, there's no money associated with it.
Right.
And I think my wife was kind of looking at me like, you know, this is fun and everything, but are you going to earn any money? And I remember going by the fire station there, and I worked my way through Cal Poly and PCC working for a private ambulance company. And so I was exposed to EMS and medicine, and a little bit to the fire service, but not so much. And then I stopped in, and I still remember walking through the fire station door the first day and feeling just this sense that I was home. And I got to know the people at the station, what they did, how they liked it. And I think the rest is history. I like to say, looking back on it, certainly not a scientific study, but I've never met a firefighter who said if they had it to do all over again, they wouldn't have chosen that career.
Right,
And,
that's
that-
fantastic. Yeah, thank you for sharing that career path. It's really fascinating. And if we had a whole nother show, even on the birds, I just imagine. I haven't studied birds, but as you talk about it, I think, gosh, there must be so much detail around each of the birds that you've studied, and you can go really deep around those real interesting aspects of each of those. So fascinating to me. And so, Mark, you are new to our Santa Barbara community, so welcome to the Santa Barbara
Thank
County
you.
community.
Thank you.
For sure. But not new to being a county fire chief. So you've been a county fire chief before, clearly now we're so lucky to have you here. But one doesn't enter into the firehouse doors, as you say, and then quickly become a county fire chief. So how did that happen? What were some of the steps?
How did I end up as a fire chief? I think, well, first of all, the welcome, I have to say, the community has been so welcoming, not just not just my department, but really the community, my colleagues throughout the county, just residents have been so
That's
welcoming.
great.
So thank you for the warm welcome, because I've
Absolutely.
felt that. As a county, I think as a firefighter, I don't know of a firefighter who gets in the job and says, I need to be the fire chief, because there isn't a part of the fire service, starting as a firefighter and then driving a fire engine and pumping it as an engineer and getting to be kind of equipment specialist, and then a captain where you're in charge of that company and that station, or a battalion chief that's in charge of every single step along the way. I didn't leave a position because I didn't like it. I left the position because the next position looked interesting. And maybe it's because I have a short attention span, I'm not sure. But it just seemed like when I did something for a while, I saw something else that looked interesting too. And so just kept raising my hand when somebody said, hey, we're looking for somebody who wants to do this. I'd raise my hand, and that would lead to another job opportunity. Stayed for the most part with the county in San Bernardino, and then took a job with Rancho Cucamonga, which was the town that I lived in, at the next rank, and then I promoted up to the next rank there, and then the county chief position, I like to say in the other SB county,
Yes.
Opened up, and I put in for it. We love Santa Barbara. I couldn't have ever dreamed about being able to work in Santa Barbara. I think we all would have started our careers here if we could have chosen to do that or had that opportunity. So I'm in Santa Barbara because the opportunity came open, and a couple people said, you ought to take a look at it. And then, of course, if you just even look, you don't even have to look that closely to find a lot of opportunity, and just such a beautiful setting. But then the challenges, and you mentioned it here, that we face, whether it's fire, rescue, EMS, the things we do, the programs that we run, the governance, it's very similar to being a county fire chief, really, in many places in the state.
Okay, that's really interesting, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the comparisons and differences. Clearly the geography is different, but in terms of entering into Santa Barbara County as the fire chief, what is sort of the way you look at Santa Barbara County differently than the way you operated in San Bernardino, the other SB county? Yeah.
Well, you look at risks. So at any place, you look at what the risks are that any community faces. And there are a lot of similar risks in that they're both fire problems. And some of the differences on maybe what a county fire department might be responsible for versus an urban department is you just have a much broader array of risks. So you don't just have the structure fire risk. You have this wildland-urban interface, which is what we're finding even in the most recent years has become so much more involved, so much more complicated, and quite frankly devastating than it ever has been throughout my career. And so engaging with communities, people that are living in communities, and I have to say, even looking at some of the ways we've always approached fire problems, there are what we would call fire-safe communities in the state of California. We've always considered to be, as fire professionals, fire-safe, and yet some of those communities are burning.
Right.
And it's making us as a fire service step back and say, you know what? Maybe there isn't necessarily a fire-safe community, that we're not safe anywhere in the state of California, especially if we're close to that urban interface. So those are the big similarities, are this urban interface, or this wildland urban interface fire problem, and then just the unique things like high angle rescue. We have the cliffs and the bluffs here, which are unique. We have rescue problems. Remote rescue problems. We have water rescue, the ocean rescue. We were very well versed in a kind of a lake or Colorado River rescue.
Right.
Here it just transitions to, with a completely separate set of strategies and equipment, to an ocean rescue. And of course we have a very active ocean rescue program here. So some similarities, and then other programs, maybe the variety of programs is similar, but the programs themselves are quite different in many cases.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. That's really, really interesting. I like how you were able to compare and contrast for us. So I think a question on viewers' mind as they think about, okay, county fire chief, what does a normal day look like? And is there such a thing as a typical day in your day to day? So we might have to make one up, or you might have to talk about some of the routines, but what would be a typical day in your week?
The typical day for me is filled, by the way, with just getting out and meeting people in the community. And that's my goal for the first 90 or 100 days, is not just to learn the department and learn the people within the department, but to learn the community and then the people that drive our communities, and the people that invest themselves in our communities, and the people that receive services from us. And really with this idea that I'm just going to keep my ears open and create conversations and opportunities for conversations. And then one of the things that I love about Peter Drucker and the way he managed was by walking around. He called it management by walking around. And so I love to just get out and listen. And if I'm not even participating in the conversation, if I'm standing around conversations, I hear other people talking about what's important to them. So meeting people, and my assistant keeps me busy all day, every day. And so with my family kind of being pulled between both Santa Barbara and now selling our house down in Rancho Cucamonga, I find that where my wife would text and say, when are you going to be home for dinner? Now, there's no dinner to go home to necessarily, so I end up staying in my office earlier and then later.
Later, yeah. So it sounds like a real identification of the importance of knowing the community and having them know you, and having relationships, real, authentic relationships with people who are not just community leaders or agency leaders, but residents here, and understanding where are the different communities in Santa Barbara County, which is so big and vast. So sounds like you struck that in terms of an important priority from the get-go, and that's what you're doing currently, morning, day, and night. Yeah. So
that's probably a good recap.
Well, and thank you for doing that. That's really important to all of us too. So something that's really important to the education field, so I'm going to go there for a minute, is that we have viewers, we have youth, we have parents of kids who are trying to decide what they want to be when they grow up. And something I hear from children and teenagers often is they want to be a firefighter. They want to be have a seat in a role that you play. So I'm wondering about the skills and the mindset that you think that our youth today would need to ensure that they have when they graduate high school to be successful, either in your role as a county chief or as a firefighter. What would you say in terms of skills and mindset needed?
It seems like, because I really didn't know what I guess wanted to be when I grew up until I was like 27, because it wasn't until I was 20, maybe 26 that I walked through a fire station door, knowing that what I was passionate about. So I always had in mind that medicine was, I had a strong desire, no matter how far I would kind of wander away from that, that part of it was interesting to me. So then it was a matter of, because I didn't know that that's what I would end up doing, it was preparing myself to do as much as I could. So keeping my options as broad as they were, but then not passing an opportunity to take a class, or not passing an opportunity to volunteer in a certain program. If that was something that I was drawn to, I never had to make myself do it, but I found myself, especially, and then having really strong role models in my life, that when I seemed like I didn't really know what to do, I could go to them and say, I feel like I'm not sure what I want to do. What do you think? And then being encouraged to just continue to seek what I was passionate about. I always thought it was medicine. I always thought it was medical school. But I think kind of drawing back into what your passions are, and then not passing up an opportunity to engage anything, even if it didn't lead to a full-time job, but it was a volunteer opportunity that was along the lines that that you were passionate about. I think that was most important, because when I finally realized what I felt like I was supposed to do in life, as I walked through that fire station door and spent time there, and the more time I spent, the more I felt like it was as if that my journey and preparation was all for that, and I didn't even have any idea that even working along firefighters on an ambulance, people would say that I was working within the ambulance, would say, "Hey Mark, you ought to look at the fire service, because you seem like you might be cut out for that." And I'm like, "No, I have my mind on medical school, and I'm going to college, and thank you for that, though I hope it works out for you." And then looking back and knowing that even the things that I did after that time prepared me to do what I'm doing right now. And so I really couldn't have taken that shortcut, even though I started later. And so if I could give any encouragement, it would be, don't feel like you need to know what you're going to do the rest of your life when you're 18 or 19 or 20. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that you sit back and do nothing when you're late teens and early 20s. Continue to move forward, continue to pick a path, continue to take classes, continue to make yourself marketable, so that when that opportunity, when you finally figure out what it is, when that opportunity comes open, you can say, "I can do it. I have the preparation. I've committed, to making myself better."
Yeah, that's great. Very profound. It makes me think about drive and flexibility, having both at the same time. Be driven, go for it, follow your dreams, your pursuits, your passions, even what you think you're wanting to do. But be flexible and open. Just you never know what will be behind that other corner. That's great. One of the things that you said is a mentor. That there's been mentors who've talked with you and kind of spoken with you here and there. And in speaking with leaders and community leaders, it seems like a commonality is that we have mentors in our life, whether we thought they were at the time or not. So I just want to give an opportunity for you, if you can think of someone who may have really offered you a mentorship in your life. Who was the person, and what are some of the things they shared with you?
Well, there's mentors, and then there's people that played a big role in my life. So my mom was my dad, because I was the youngest of 7, but my oldest brother was only 19. So my mom was left with 7 children, and she had to make the decision on, now what? And so she grieved, and then she got up and said, I have 7 kids to raise, and the determination and the drive, and then the compassion that she still had as a mother. So she was the breadwinner, typically back then as a traditional, father figure, but she was there to love me as a mother. And so she taught me how to face adversity and then to rise above it. And she never remarried, but it doesn't surprise me, because I still remember her coming home from dates, and I was probably only about 10, and the gentleman would open the door, and there would be like 7 of us, like this. And I remember her even saying a couple times, "Well, come on in for a cup of coffee," and it was, "Oh, no, thank you, Betty.
I think I might have to,
Thank you, I had a wonderful time." So my mom taught me so much about, she retired as a community college president in LA.
Wow.
And she the way she interacted with people, I didn't even know it until much later in life, but I said, I really learned how to interact with people and to overcome adversity and to succeed from her. But growing up without a father, and when she was gone, I had coaches who volunteered their time to coach teams that I would look to, that would invest in me. They would be the ones that said, "Mark, you can do it. Mark, if there's anything you need," knowing that I didn't have a dad, "feel like you can come to me and we can talk about it." And I didn't really consider them, like you said, official or formal mentors, but I look back, these are men and women who made themselves available to a kid who might come from came from a single family or single mother or single parent home, and they said, "I want to make myself available." And so I found myself availing themselves to me, and then me taking advantage of that opportunity. And as I look back, there's probably too many to name. I remember a coach, Coach Drain, who I taught me how to lose when I was it's as important to know how to lose as it is to win as a team player, and then how to work with others and how to submit your interest to that of the team. Just all those kind of lessons you learn is you don't even really think about it until you look back and questions like this that make you look back and think about those things.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's really meaningful, very profound, and your mother, 94, I think you said, what an amazing woman and leader and influence in your life, and all of these other people that we didn't get a chance to name, but those that you did are pretty profound. And just turning the table for just a moment, Mark, you are such a family person. You came from a large family. You have a large family. So let's talk a little bit about your family before we have to close our show today. So let's talk about them.
Yeah, well, I married up, I like to say. So I married my college sweetheart, and we started having kids, and we had a lot of them. My oldest son, Tucker, he's 24. He's just graduating from CBU with a degree in aviation and a minor in mission aviation just this next month. And so he wants to be a commercial pilot. And so building hours, and that's kind of an exciting process. Then we lost my second son, Dawson, and we lost him two years ago, but it was really kind of the heartbeat of the family, just really taught us how to love. And since we've lost him, we've realized how much we enjoy each other and how much more time we love each other. So that's kind of learning from my mom how to turn something that was so tragic into something that we can be better for. And then my son Jeremiah, he sounds like he wants to be a firefighter like his dad. I don't know why, but he wants to be a firefighter, and he's pursuing that, going to emergency medical technician. And really it starts, being a firefighter seems like the end goal is so kind of overwhelming, but at the end of the day, it's just taking one step at a time, and he's doing that. And then my two daughters, they're twins, twin 19-year-olds. Couldn't be any more different in the way they look and in the way they act. One's serving on a mission with Youth with a Mission in Peru, and the other one is going to school out in Rancho Cucamonga, Chafee.
Wow. Gosh, thank you so much for sharing about your story, both as you as a child growing up and now you as a father and a husband. And you talked about role models that have impacted you, and just in the brief moment that we had a chance to speak about your children, what a role model you are for them. And to your late son Dawson, the role model he was for all of you and the impact that he's made on your life. These few moments we've had together, these minutes that we've had in this show, something that I so appreciate and so grateful for is that we got a chance to learn a little bit about the behind the scenes of our county fire chief. The work, the role that you have is so important. The impact that you have as a professional is so profound. But the person you are, the person that you were as a child and all the way now and still contributing to your family, your friends, I mean, that's really so special to the fact that you shared with all of us. So I just want to take a moment and say thank you for that, Mark. And we have just a few seconds here. Is there anything that you'd like to say in the moments that we have to say to the community who's watching today?
Yeah, maybe just a shout out to the organization I lead, and that is I'm a lot like a coach. I take very, very talented men and women, and it's my job to really inspire and motivate them to be their very best every day as they challenge me to be the best, for me to challenge them. But I need to let the community here know that they have such a talented and dedicated and things you can't even teach, which is passionate group of men and women that protect them each and every day. The community ought to know that, and just the appreciation I have for being able to lead them.
Great. Thank you for that message, Mark, and thank you for joining me today. Appreciate it. I'm Susan Salcido, Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools. Thank you so much for joining us today for this edition of Local Leaders.